So I'm going to pose a few questions. Of course, if somebody wants to speak up, I'll be very happy. The first thing I wanted to discuss is coming from the smallest piece of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm the founder of Opino, this company. I founded it 10 years ago, the same week that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. So it was probably not the best part of your cycle when you were mentioning, but we've seen a tremendous change in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, in the global one. And I'm particularly glad that for the first time in places like Spain or France or even Europe, we now have a generation of second or multiple time entrepreneurs. And that's probably the key to building a next phase of entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that's probably also the great base for building a good network of angel investors who've been entrepreneurs before. And again, entrepreneurs may have been successful at building companies, but we're not necessarily savvy about investment. So what would you recommend, and how do you think we need to structure our ecosystem so that the people who have been successful can contribute to take us to the next level?
I mean, one thing to remember is that ecosystems take time to grow. You know, and this is why Fairchild is such an important reminder to all of us, because the Valley is actually, you know, that's over 70 years old. And then, you know, the next best thing you could say is London, at least until 29th March next year. But again, if you would have gone to London in the late 90s or so, there was no ecosystem. There were technology companies, but there was not this ecosystem. So those things take time to grow. And what we're seeing is that we find more regions and we find more hubs that are emerging. And you're absolutely right that the more entrepreneurs actually feed back into it, either by founding their second, third, fourth company, or by, you know, having had that right place, right product, right time, and a bit of luck moment, and had an exit that allows them to feed back into it, that will help. You know, when you look at, I don't know, in France, Paris, you know, wasn't a particularly vibrant startup hub, you know, maybe even 10 years ago. Yeah. And today you go there, and Station F is you know, an astonishing hub. So we have that. I think what has changed in many societies, traditionally, specifically in Europe, we tended to be a lot more conservative. Yeah. And you know, our societal systems compared to the slightly rougher one that the US have is a contributor there. And on the flip side, failure was bad. You know, if you fail, you know, a lot of startups do fail. But if you fail once in, like, you know, in Germany where I grew up from, that's, you know, you're basically done. No bank would lend you any money anymore. No way. You know what, you went bankrupt, that thing didn't work, why would your next thing work? And my thinking is, well, you know, if something failed, then hey, guess what? You know, is I actually now know all the things that I shouldn't be doing. In other words, it should turn me into a better founder. And that is where we're now seeing swing. And some of the, you know, Valley-based rock stars and their stories help with that, which is why, you know, I'm not suggesting that they're the be-all, end-all, but they deserve to be celebrated because they do actually contribute to this atmosphere.
Katharina, I'm actually going to drop a bomb now. Speaking about Europe, and I see that Daria is speaking after us, so I'm kind of going to set the stage about something I'm worried about. We're seeing that in order to make the changes we need in the environment, and also in order to hold a leading economic position in the future, we need disruption in many industries. And disruption takes discovery, and I think we're pretty good in Europe at discovery. We have good physicists, we have good mathematicians. We've always had them. And then it requires brute force. It requires large investors, long-term view, commitment, and you know, large groups of people working together, and government. And you know, a government with the guts and with the commitment to just break a barrier. Are you pessimistic or optimistic about where Europe is going in this direction? Are we, compared to other large economies, are we going to be able to keep up with the pace of disruption, or are we going to fall behind?
To be honest, I'm optimistic because particularly the European Commission has a lot of instruments to support this disruptiveness in Europe. So there are instruments, of course they are highly competitive and only the best of the best get through it and get supported, and they will be supported through millions. You hand in the proposals with your disruptive ideas, starting from scratch. They get all they deserve all the right value, and everybody can hand in the proposals, and so I think European Union is doing a really, really good job to support disruptive ideas. But on the other hand side, there is a time window, and you have to be disruptive, and you have to succeed in a short term, so in 3 years or quite faster. And then the private investors come in and they have to trust. So it is a process where you have to think through from the beginning, and it could be longer or shorter, and failure is part of it. Mm-hmm. So I think what we really have to do, and I just repeat what my colleague have said and fully agree, that we need to learn from failures. Everybody does failure, and also when using our taxes, when you're supporting disruptive ideas, when supporting disruptive enterprises, startups, they fail, money is lost, taxes are lost, but on the other hand side, there is a lot of done what others what's need to be done to go to the right solution, and this is just destructive construction. So it is part of the game, and we need to learn it. But I'm really optimistic because there are instruments that help, and particularly from the government, from the European Union and Commission, they support, they have instruments, they show the way, there is a horizon and there is a future. And I'm optimistic compared to others, but I think where we need to start is our mindset. So really this entrepreneurial mindset that we fail, we have to broaden our horizon. That's it. Yeah. And here we start at the humans.
Yeah, if I can comment on that, I totally agree on the mindset. And I think if you look especially at science-based companies and deep tech companies, which was your question, if we compare Europe to the US or even Israel, like in these places, it's much more common for scientists to go out of the lab and create a company. And historically, Europe has been more like not as good on that because scientists prefer to stay in the lab and so on. And it's interesting to see that there are a few investors and programs, company builders trying to tackle that gap, like Deep Science Ventures in the UK, for instance, the Collider in Barcelona. There's a company called Hello Tomorrow. They have a program called Deep Tech Founders, and they help scientists to either becoming entrepreneurs themselves or to partner with entrepreneurs to build great companies. And that makes me optimistic about what we might see in Europe in the future.
So going to sustainability. Usually a country that needs to disrupt is because they have the critical mass, as we said, but they also sometimes are suffering the problem they need to face in a stronger way. You know, do you think China has a chance at leading the clean energy and sustainable food industry?
I don't know for the food part, but for the clean energy, I mean, they're already doing it. Most solar panels in the world and a lot of clean tech solutions are being built in China today. They are leading that also because of really what people experience on a day-to-day basis, like the pollution in big Chinese cities. Like, it's terrible. It's better than it used to be because, for instance, you have company like BYD where they put, I think it's every week, they put as many electric buses on the streets as the whole fleet in London. Basically, it's completely crazy. So they are going at it with full speed, obviously with certain values and a certain government model that maybe we don't necessarily agree with in Europe. But yeah, I think they're here to lead, but we need to find a way to partner with these companies as well.
Okay, actually, that was the situation in which I wanted to leave the conversation, because next up is going to be Daria Tajaj, who's a well-known author, recently published a lot about these issues, and she's going to be taking the stage to close the conference with a conference about network growth model to overcome the crisis in Europe. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome, Daria.